Chapter 1. The Threadless Child. Adam's first knowledge of the world was pressure. Not light, not sound, not the rhythm of a human voice traveling through blood and flesh to reach him before language. Pressure came first, enormous and complete. It wrapped him on every side. It held him in heat and pulse and dark. It pressed at his skull, his chest, his curled fists, as if the whole world had already found him and was deciding what shape he should be before he could draw breath enough to object. There was no room yet for self inside it, only sensation so total it might as well have been law. Even before breath, the world announced itself as something that intended to shape him. Then something else touched him. It was finer than pressure and colder than the fluid dark around him. It moved with intention. He had no words for reaching, for probing, for theft, but later, if he had been able to remember the first instant of it clearly, he might have said that something thin and bright had searched for the places inside him where life was meant to open and accept a claim. It expected welcome. It found resistance. Outside him, his mother screamed. The force around him convulsed. Flesh tightened. Blood rushed harder. A hand struck against the wall of the dark that held him, perhaps from outside, perhaps from the laboring body around him, and for an instant he felt the whole chamber beyond as vibration. Hurried feet, wood scraped over stone, a basin set down too fast, someone beginning a prayer and breaking off halfway through. The cold, reaching thing returned. It came threaded through patterns too large for a newborn mind to understand, but not too large for his body to know was wrong. It sought channels. It sought purchase. It sought the inward yielding by which every other child in the valley, in the province, in the ordered world beyond, had been quietly joined to the great invisible weave that named them, sorted them, and took from them the first dew of being alive. Even in the blind dark before thought, Adam felt that we've not as law but as something stretched over a deeper wrongness and forced to hold. Touched him again. Every part of him clenched. The refusal was not chosen. It was not brave. It was not even conscious. It was the way a wound closes around a blade and keeps the steel from reaching anything deeper. It was the way stone remains stone when water throws itself against it winter after winter and still cannot persuade it to become a river. His heart hammered. The dark around him shuddered with effort. Something in the room beyond answered with fear. "No," someone whispered. The voice came from far away through flesh and liquid and pain. A woman's voice, not his mother's. Older, certain enough in ordinary life to command a room. Uncertain now. No, no, it should have. Another cry from his mother. Raw. Animal. Then a man's voice, strained with the effort of pretending to calm what he did not understand. "Again," he said. "Hold her. Hold." A sound like wire drawn hard across stone moved through the chamber. Adam twisted for the first time in his life, not because the labor drove him, but because the cold reaching thing had sharpened. It was no longer only searching. It was trying to force itself inward. It was trying to take. His body answered with violence. The dark around him spasmed. Pain slammed through his mother and through him with no boundary between them. Somewhere outside, glass shattered. A lamp guttered out. Someone cried out the opening words of an order blessing, but the words tangled before the name at the end could be spoken. The reaching thing slipped, not failed, slipped, as if it had encountered, not emptiness, but a surface turned the wrong way. A rupture. For one impossible moment another presence stirred behind Adam's heartbeat. It was not soft. It did not feel newborn. It was vast in the way buried things are vast. Not because they move, but because they remain, and all the weight above them is still not enough to make them less themselves. It gave no message. It offered no comfort. It simply existed where the cold, bright thing had expected vacancy. Then the labor took him. His mother's body bore down with a force that turned the whole world into a narrowing passage of agony and compulsion. Pressure became motion. Motion became tearing. The dark split open around him and cold air struck his skin like knives. He came into the world and raged. He did not wail at once. He choked, fought, jerked against the hands that caught him, and opened his mouth on silence before breath found him properly. When it did, his cry tore through the room so hard and high that one of the women near the bed flinched as if struck. The chamber smelled of blood, hot water, lamp smoke, and wet linen. His mother lay half-raised on the narrow birthing bed, sweat-soaked hair pasted to her cheeks, one hand clawed into the blanket beneath her. She was young enough that pain had not yet hollowed her face permanently, but old enough for fear to settle into it quickly. Her eyes went to the midwife first. The midwife was staring at Adam. So was the order witness. He stood near the foot of the bed in a clean dark robe marked at the collar with the many-angled knot of sanctioned service. A silver instrument hung from one hand, its fine hooked arms made to detect the settling of the thread in a newborn body. Such devices usually chimed faintly. Sometimes they rang brighter if a child promised unusual strength. This one made no sound at all. The silence around it seemed to spread. It changed the room more thoroughly than shouting could have. Each of the adults seemed, for an instant, to become aware of the others as witnesses rather than helpers. The birthing chamber, cluttered a moment earlier with the practical debris of labor, suddenly felt arranged into evidence. Bowl, blade, cloth, blood, steam, all waiting to be interpreted by whatever judgment came next. In places governed by doctrine, failure was never solitary for long. It immediately began looking for additional bodies to implicate. "Give him here," the midwife said. The woman holding Adam hesitated a fraction of a second too long. The witness saw it. "Now!" His voice cracked like a switch. Adam was taken from the first pair of hands and laid on a folded cloth on the low table beside the bed. The midwife was quick, practiced. She cleared his mouth, checked his limbs, glanced beneath the cord of his umbilicus for the first visible tracings that often showed where the thread had seated itself. Her fingers moved faster, then slower. "He breathes well," she said. No one had asked whether he breathes well. The witness stepped close and lowered the silver instrument over the child's chest. Still nothing. No chiming. No tremor. No answering line of light beneath the skin. He frowned and adjusted the angle. Adam, slick with birth and furious at cold, kicked once with surprising force. The hooked metal arms struck his breastbone lightly. The instrument shivered in the witness's hand as if the vibration had traveled into it and become confusion. "What did you do?" he asked. The question was aimed at the women, but the fear in it was larger than either of them. His authority had not left him, but it had acquired the brittle edge of something standing too near a fact it could not absorb. Adam's mother heard that edge and understood, before any explanation was offered, that the room had tipped away from ordinary danger into another category entirely. The mother tried to rise. "What is it?" "Lie back," said the midwife. "What is it?" she repeated, louder now. Her gaze had fixed on Adam with the terrified animal focus of someone who knows the shape of a room has changed and is about to learn whether the change means death. The witness set the instrument aside and reached with his bare hand instead, pressing two fingers just below Adam's collarbone where the earliest sympathetic warmth of the thread usually gathered. Adam stopped crying. The room noticed. The silence that fell was worse than the crying had been. The child's eyes, still blurred with newness, opened and did not seem to fix on anything, yet the witness snatched his hand away as if those unfocused eyes had looked directly into him. The movement infected the room at once. The midwife's breath shortened. Adam's mother tried to lever herself higher through pain that should have kept her flat. Even the lamps seemed newly fragile, their small circles of light no longer warming the chamber so much as exposing the fear inside it. Fear moved through the room with humiliating speed. No one named it. Naming would have made it communal, and each adult was already trying to keep panic arranged as a private defect. "He should be marked," the witness said. "Then mark him," the mother whispered. No one answered. The midwife had gone pale. She bent close enough that her breath touched Adam's face. Very carefully, as if handling something half sacred and half poisonous, she turned his small wrist upward. The inner skin there was bare. No filament shimmered beneath it. No newborn tracing branched toward the palm. There was only ordinary flesh, mottled red from birth. The witness crossed himself in the formal geometry of the order, touching brow, mouth, sternum, left shoulder, right. He completed the pattern correctly, but the last motion lacked conviction. as if his hand had remembered while his faith lagged behind. Doctrine was easiest when it could move faster than doubt. Here doubt had reached the body first. It showed in posture before it showed in speech, in the witness's shoulders drawing tighter, in the midwife's careful stillness, in the mother's fingers knotting white around the blanket. Whatever name the order might later force onto this hour, the bodies in the room had already begun answering to dread. "That is not possible," he said. From the bed, Adam's mother made a sound like someone choking on a sob she was trying not to release. The midwife looked at her, then at the closed shutters, then at the door. A whole line of thought moved across her face too fast to stop. "It may be delayed," she said. The witness turned on her. "Do not insult me." The words carried more than anger. They carried terror at hearing doctrine weakened by improvisation. If the world could produce a child who did not fit the sanction pattern, then every explanation resting on that pattern had to work harder all at once. The mother pushed herself up despite the pain. Blood darkened the blankets under her hips. "Tell me what is wrong with my son." The witness looked at the child again. Whatever answer he might have given in other circumstances died before it reached his mouth. Wrong was not the word for this. There were names for children born dim, children born overbright, children born burdened, children born cursed by improper crossings of line or right or season. There were procedures for all of them. The ordered world had a place for defects because defects proved the necessity of order. But Adam had arrived as if the first claim itself had been refused. That opened no category, threatened one. It was a failure of containment, a rupture in the very architecture of reality. The lamp nearest the bed fluttered once, then went out. All three adults turned. No draft had touched the room. The shutters were barred. The chimney draw was sound. The midwife herself had checked it before the labor began. A second lamp dimmed, not extinguished fully, but lowered, as though some unseen hand had passed over the flame and persuaded it toward obedience. The room was responding to the vacuum in the child. The pattern was buckling under the weight of an impossible absence. The witness backed up one step. The midwife did not. She was too old and too tired and too deep in the practical work of blood and birth to surrender immediately to abstractions. She scooped Adam up from the table and wrapped him tighter in the warmed cloth. At once he began crying again. The ordinary ugliness of the sound steadied everyone a little. A crying infant could still belong to the known world. Hunger, cold, outrage, breath, these had remedies. The witness clung to that fact for a heartbeat, the midwife for two, and Adam's mother for as long as she could keep her eyes on his mouth and not on the instrument that had refused him. "Whatever this is," she said, "he is a child. She needs rest. He needs heat." "Nothing leaves this room," the witness said. The mother's face changed. She understood that sentence. Women in childbirth learned quickly to hear which words belonged to procedure and which belonged to danger. "You will not take him." The witness did not answer her directly. "The matter must be referred." He spoke as if the phrase itself could restore order, as if sending the problem upward into sanctioned hands might make it smaller. But the room no longer believed in escalation as comfort. Referral was simply another word for loss. "To whom?" the midwife asked. He turned to the door. The latch would not move. He stopped, tried again, harder, wood creaked. The iron bar on the other side did not lift. For a strange instant he simply stood there with one hand on the latch, his whole body listening. Then, very faintly, from somewhere below the house, came a sound like stone answering a distant blow. The midwife heard it too. So did the mother, whose eyes widened not with recognition exactly, but with the kind of old rural fear that survives even in places the order believes it has fully instructed. "There are old foundations here," she whispered. The witness rounded on her. "Be silent." But his own voice had thinned. Adam cried harder. His tiny body strained against the cloth until one fist came free. He opened his hand once, fingers flaring wide into the cold air as if reaching for something not in the room. The pressure under everything returned. Not labor now, not pain, something lower, something in the dark beneath the house and the hill and the ordered roads beyond it. The witness felt it and went still as a hunted animal. The midwife crossed herself, but not in the order's clean geometry. Her hand moved in an older pattern, quick and hidden against her own apron. The mother saw that too. "Please," she said, and now she was speaking to the midwife, not the witness. "Please." The older woman looked down at the child in her arms. Adam's eyes had opened again. They were newborn eyes, clouded and unfixed, but the screaming had stopped as suddenly as before. His chest rose and fell. One fist remained tight, the other had curled back into the cloth. He looked, for one impossible instant, not like a child saved from fear, but like fear itself had paused to consider him. The midwife made her choice. It happened entirely in her face. Calculation, dread, refusal, resolve. No proclamation marked it. No heroism. Only the exhausted, dangerous decision to place one bleeding mother and one impossible infant above the proper chain of report. That decision carried the weight of class, creed, training, survival, and consequence all at once. It would cost her if they lived. It might kill her if they were caught. Still, she made it with the blunt economy of someone who understood that some moral acts begin not in certainty but in disgust. She looked at the mother. "Can you stand?" The witness took one step toward them. "You will not move him." The older woman turned on him with a force he had not expected. "And you will not shout in a room where a woman is still bleeding, unless you mean to answer to the hillfolk outside when they hear it." He hesitated. That was all she needed. "Can you stand?" she asked again. The mother swallowed and nodded once. Another sound came from below, heavier this time. Not a collapse. A shift. The shutters rattled in their frames. The witness went for the door again, this time with both hands. "Open!" he shouted. No one answered from the other side. The midwife moved quickly. She set Adam against his mother's chest for one brief second while she stripped the blood-soaked linens from the bed and bundled them. She worked with a frantic, focused efficiency, her hands never trembling. The old woman went to the far wall where a narrow cabinet stood. She dragged it aside with a scrape of wood over stone, revealing not a niche but a low black opening half hidden behind it. The witness stared. That was sealed. "It was forgotten," she said. The pressure in the room changed again. Adam, pressed against his mother's breast, went utterly still. The opening breathed up cold air that smelled of wet rock and roots. Beneath that was another smell, older and stranger, like dust shut away from all sun but not from memory. Adam's mother inhaled it through blood loss and panic and recognized only this. Whatever lay below did not smell governed. It smelled unclaimed, or claimed by something the order had failed to teach her how to fear correctly. The mother began to shake. "Where does it go?" The midwife answered without looking at her. "Somewhere the pattern never sat right." The witness lunged toward them. He was not quick enough. The older woman snatched the poker from beside the banked fire and swung it into his forearm with all the force in her body. Bone cracked. He shouted and staggered sideways into the birthing table, sending the silver instrument skidding across the floor. "Go," she said. The mother stumbled toward the opening, one hand on the wall, the other crushing Adam against her chest hard enough that later bruises would flower where her fingers had been. She ducked into the dark passage. Cold swallowed her immediately to the shoulders. The witness tried to recover, face mottled with pain and disbelief. "You fool," he hissed. "Do you know what he is?" The midwife met his eyes. For the first time since the labor began, she looked less like a functionary of sanctioned birth and more like what she had likely been beneath those duties all along. An old woman of the hills, tired of seeing institutions arrive at the bedside only when they wished to take. "No," she said, "but I know what you are." She slammed the cabinet back into place. The last thing Adam knew before the dark took him again was the beat of his mother's heart against his cheek and, beneath it, far below, the slow answering silence of stone that did not answer to the order at all.